Hi team, it's Josh and I'm back with my review of the Gigabyte Aero 17, the 4K model with the 2070 Max-Q. Now, this is one of my more interesting reviews. There's a lot of twists and turns with this laptop, so I highly recommend you watch right through to the end. And if you like what you're watching, please hit me up with a subscribe. But before I delve in, I just wanted to say thank you to you, the viewer, the subscribers. It's really been motivating me to see these positive comments that you guys have been leaving, so I greatly appreciate it. So as you may know, I'm on a mission to find the highest powered portable laptop that runs cool and quiet. And since owning the Razer Blade 15, the Mercury White model, I'm going to add to that criteria, it has to look great. Now, even though the Aero 17 can't really be classified as a portable laptop, for my specific use case, I couldn't pass up its appeal. I live in a one-bedroom apartment, you're looking at it right now, and when I'm doing power-intensive work, I set up a big monitor on this dining table, a 27-inch with a keyboard and mouse, and it creates this messy look in the center of my living room space. Which brings me to this laptop, because I used to own the Alienware 17R3, another 17-inch laptop with a 4K screen. And I found with that laptop, I wasn't requiring the need to plug in this external monitor and keyboard when I had such a laptop. Because with these laptops, the screen is so accurate and so vibrant and so clear, I can actually run the scaling at 175%, which gives me a resolution that I'm using that's greater than 1920 by 1080. So let's get into it. I'm going to review this laptop my way, which means I'm going to focus on what it's like to actually use and own the laptop. And I'm not going to shower you with an overwhelming amount of benchmarks and quantitative data, because there's already plenty of laptop reviewers out there that do a great job of that. Links below. Firstly, this laptop is an improvement over the Aero 15 OLED that I reviewed in several ways. It just feels more polished and that more issues were ironed out before launch. There's very little coil wind with this machine. They've also made the hinge of the screen more sturdy. So you can bring it down like this and it doesn't collapse right down like the Aero 15 OLED did. And you can still open it with one hand, no problems. The next thing that I wanted to mention is in Gigabyte's Control Center software, it used to crash a lot on the Aero 15 OLED, but on this model it doesn't crash at all, which is great. This machine runs very cool and quiet, even more so than the Aero 15 OLED, which itself wasn't that loud a machine. It's substantially cooler to the touch when you're running intensive tasks than say the Razer Blade 15, where the whole chassis gets really warm and uncomfortable to use. Now, obviously a lot of that could be to do with the larger chassis being a 17-inch model, but it is such a comfortable machine to use. The fans do pulsate a little bit, and you can hear that in a very quiet environment like I have right now. But if I turn on the air conditioning unit like the one back here, or I have a fan running or something like that, it overpowers it. Overall, top marks here, it really does run very cool and quiet. The next point is the SD card reader. It's actually been moved from over here on the Aero 15 OLED to over here on the Aero 17, which is a really good change because it used to get really hard to put it in here with the power cable. It would just be a bit tight with, say, a USB connection and all of that. Now, the other thing about the SD card here is I've had no problems with plugging in the card and being told I need to format the card, even though it was formatted, and deleting my data, which happened on the Aero 15 OLED. And numerous viewers of mine said they also had that problem. One person did say that he rolled back the drivers and it solved that issue for him, but for me personally, I didn't get that working, and it's not a problem on the Aero 17 from what I can see. Lastly, the light on the back of the laptop screen turns off appropriately when I close the lid. I found on the Aero 15 OLED that when I closed the lid, sometimes that light stayed on for quite a while, and it confused me as to whether the laptop had actually shut down or not. Now let's get into performance, because this laptop has a well-cooled 8-core CPU inside, and on Cinebench R20 with a negative 120 millivolt applied, I got a score of around 4,000, which is absolutely excellent. And by the way, it was not undervolted out of the box. Now, just for comparison, my Razer Blade 15 with a 9750H CPU got a Cinebench R20 score of around 2,700, so this is way faster than that. I am aware of a couple of reviewers online who are able to get higher Cinebench R20 scores with undervolts of around negative 150 and even greater, For me, I found my laptop became very unstable with a negative 130 millivolt undervolt or higher. So that means that the silicon lottery is at play here. There is some variance. Now, where does it put this CPU? It's an incredibly powerful one. If you think about it, this is getting Cinebench R20 scores that are similar to the brand new Ryzen 3600X 6-core desktop processor, and almost as high as last year's Ryzen 2700X processor. So it really puts this processor in a very high performance sphere, regardless of laptop or even a desktop. But as supplied from the manufacturer, this is a very odd machine, and I want to talk about why. If you are a content creator, and I'm going to run some demos right now, what you'll find is in a lot of tasks, the RAM just maxes out because it only has 16 gigs. Plus, it comes with a 512 gig SSD that's not the fastest NVMe SSD. And as a content creator, you're going to fill that up instantly. So if you look at some of my tests here, what you're going to see is I'm going to compare the Aero 17 next to my Alienware 13R3, which only has a quad-core processor. When I switch the Alienware 13R3 to 32 gigs of RAM, you'll see that with its just quad-core processor and 1060 GTX card, it actually beats the Aero 17. So in some of these cases, RAM is certainly bottlenecking this processor. Now let's talk about gaming. The 2070 Max-Q in this laptop gets very little benefit by being paired with this high-powered 8-core CPU. If you look at my 3D Mark TimeSpy scores of it compared to the Razer Blade 15, and here are my Firestrike scores of it compared to the Razer Blade 15, it really doesn't perform noticeably better. And that's because the CPU isn't really bottlenecking this graphics card. Just think about it. If you had a 3600X desktop part, a Ryzen, or a 2700X, which is similar performance than this CPU, you'd probably be pairing it with a much more powerful graphics card, something like the 2070 Super, which runs around 40% faster than this graphics card. So there's really no reason from a gaming perspective to pair these parts together. What about programming? Well, the results are very varied. In a big database import for MySQL, 3 gigabytes, I found that because it runs off one thread and this laptop can boost a single thread to almost 5 gigahertz, it performs really well. But for other programming tasks, like here's an example of me compiling code and running an app server, it doesn't perform that much better than my, say, Alienware 13R3 with only 4 cores. So in the real world, didn't make a huge amount of difference. Overall, I really don't think this configuration makes sense. Either they need to drop the CPU back to say a 9750H and reduce the price, or they need to up the other components, putting in at least 32 gigs of RAM, a 1TB SSD, and having a more expensive option for a 2080 Max-Q, which at least would have a chance of running the 4K screen at 4K with medium settings for games. Now, you might say, but Josh, a simple solution is just pop open the back, upgrade the RAM, upgrade the SSD, no problems. And normally I'd say, yes, that's true. And it certainly was for the SSD. But this machine has a really interesting problem and an unfortunate one with RAM. It seems like Gigabyte have locked out several common RAM modules. For instance, if I tried to upgrade the RAM here to my G.Skill Ripjaw 32 gig kit, what happens if I put those two 16 modules in together, when I start the laptop, it comes up with a black screen and it just constantly power cycles and it doesn't boot to the BIOS or Windows. If I take one of the sticks out and put in one of the sticks it came with, it does boot and it shows correctly 24 gig of RAM, but it only runs at 2400 megahertz. And I can swap the RAM around, and that's the only situation I can work, even though the 32 gig kit works perfectly in my Alienware 13R3 and my Razer Blade 15. I reached out to Gigabyte support and they said they only support Samsung RAM and I should buy it. I looked on Reddit and online. It also seems that Crucial works well, and some people say they have HyperX going in it. So I ordered a HyperX kit and it should be arriving tomorrow, and I'm going to put the results of the tests on that kit down in the description below. Onto the rest of the laptop. The display is very luxurious, and as I mentioned before, I'm not turning to my 27-inch external monitor as much with this display. It's vibrant, colors pop, it's very bright, I had no dead pixels, Backlight bleed was at an absolute minimum. It really is a great display. One thing to note though is with the standard color profile that it comes with, I found that the oranges looked rather fluoro, but when I reinstalled Windows and had the default color profile, I have no problems like that. Because when I create content, obviously I want to create the content in a similar way that looks good on the screen you're watching, and you might not have a screen like this. The keyboard, like the Aero 15, is absolutely excellent. It's a step above the Razer Blade 15 for sure, and it's way above the MacBook Pros. Now, the only problem with the keyboard of note is the secondary functions don't light up, which for me isn't such a problem because I just created custom colors for the keyboard where certain function keys have certain colors, so it wasn't the biggest issue out there. The trackpad's really solid, really easy to use, one of the better ones, no problems at all, and the fingerprint reader in it works great. As mentioned, this laptop runs very cool and quiet. Even running intensive tasks, it really is one of the quietest laptops I've ever owned. In a silent room, with the quiet profile, it does pulsate a little bit with the fans, but it's pretty quiet, and just the air conditioning unit or some background noise will drown it out. I'm very fussy with noise coming from laptops, and this laptop is certainly very fine. Size-wise, this laptop is very small for a 17-inch laptop, which is just awesome, and it's really lightweight. In fact, it's the only 17-inch laptop that I'm somewhat comfortable using on my lap propped up in bed. Here are some images of it next to the Alienware 13R3. As you can see, it's a pretty small machine. Great work there, Gigabyte. One thing that concerns me about the laptop is the strength of the construction of the chassis. As you can see from this photo, I got a ding in it. I have a backpack with a padded area for laptops, and this laptop fits in it quite nicely. Normally I just put my laptops in and I go out for the day, and I've never had a ding in it with almost 20 laptops in this backpack. Next, the speakers continue to be nothing special. They seem to be the same as the Aero 15. They don't get that loud, they really don't fill the room. I was hoping for more on the Aero 17. You can install the Nahimic app and raise the volumes through that app, which gives you a little bit more volume, but these really aren't the best speakers in a laptop. I'm a little disappointed there. The battery life is decent. It's around the same as the Aero 15 with 4 to 6 hours, and all cores are capped at 1.9 gigahertz. The webcam's quality for a 720p is actually quite okay, but because of the placement, it just really can't be used for any serious calls. You're gonna have to get an external camera, which sucks. The other thing that worries me is the support. For an expensive laptop like this one, I tend to prefer purchasing from a brand like Alienware, Dell, or Lenovo, where they offer the ability to upgrade the warranty for greater amount of time and offer on-site support where a technician will come to you. That really gives me a lot of reassurance. And failing that, I tend to purchase from, say, Apple or Microsoft that have stores you can take it to. And all of those manufacturers I mentioned offer the ability to have accident protection, which is really useful. So with this laptop for a $3,000 plus price tag, I just don't have that peace of mind. And lastly, the price. I brought this from Newegg for $3,199, and literally the next day they had a sale on for $180 off. Luckily, Newegg honored it and just reduced the price. So when purchasing this laptop, I'd advise you to just be very careful of these rotating sales. If you buy it full price, just keep an eye out while the return period is going, because a place like Newegg will honor it. All right, let's wrap up. This is an absolutely excellent laptop. Who's it for? Someone like me who performs a variety of intensive tasks, games occasionally, but not competitively, and can really make use of this 17-inch 4K screen. There's no major gotchas that you can't resolve yourself. My only gripes with the laptop is it doesn't come in white like the Mercury White Razer Blade 15, which really spoiled me, and that they don't include 32 gig of RAM with it out of the box because it is so fussy with memory. Anyway, that's all for today, folks. If you like this video, hit that subscribe button, click the thumbs up. I would greatly appreciate it. And if you want to ask questions about this laptop or any other topic, reply with comments. Till next time, I'll catch you later.